to the Unfiltered Flash, which is a shortened version of our show, The Future's Edge. I'm Jim Iuorio. That's Bob Iaccino. Bob, did you hear about this election that happened earlier in the week?
I don't know why that makes me laugh.
By the way, that's about the 50th time I've told that joke.
I'm a fucking child, I swear to God.
It's not even a joke, but it has some string over Bobby where he reflexively laughed just because of how dumb it is. Okay, I actually thought looking at markets on Wednesday was honestly one of the most fascinating days of markets that I've seen in years. Just the little backstories. The backstory, as you turned me on to with crude. Can you walk us through that with crude, with demand versus supply?
Yeah, so crude oil initially spiked. It's again, we waited a day after to do this sort of election reaction, right? And with the Congress going red and the executive branch going red, crude oil kind of turned bullish, which I think a lot of people may not have expected. But the issue with that is that even if drill baby drill becomes a thing, you need an 18 to 24 month runway to get any actual crude oil into the market. And so the suspected deregulation that's going to come with the Trump presidency and the lack of pushback from Congress that should come with a Republican Congress, a lot of these things are going to get going basically in the first 100 days, which could spike a little bit of crude oil demand if you believe that theory.
It's amazing because as someone, you trade oil a lot more than I do, and I trade equities more. And I always picture equities being forward looking. They digest it all and go jump months forward. And crude oil didn't do that, which I thought was interesting. Now let's move on to the Russell and to copper. First off, the move in Russell, I thought was absolutely fascinating. And the thesis there is that if Trump is really going to be someone who starts trade wars, and again, trade war might be too hyperbolic to say, but I can't think of anything else to say it. So a trade conflict with China. Perhaps he freezes them out, tariffs their products. That really would benefit the small companies who have a greater tendency to do their business within our borders than it does any other spot. Now, there's also the element of, are there people who are still short the Russell and long the NASDAQ as part of a several-year trade? Maybe. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think the Russell and copper, the combination of the two things sort of push forward that narrative, at least on day 1A, right? The first trading day after the election results were made positive, they were confirmed. You saw that narrative. You saw the narrative of fear of a China freeze out, whether it be tariffs or just sort of trade blockades, for lack of a better phrase, anything that affected China's ability to do business and therefore buy copper. They're still the largest consumer and smelter of copper in the world. And then you saw it in the Russell because the vast majority of the Russell's earnings come domestically. Now, that's not to say there aren't large multinational companies in the Russell. There are, but they're more dominant in the S&P and the Dow, and especially the NASDAQ.
Okay, I'm going to just go right over the fact that the word smelt always makes me smile a little bit. I don't know why. It just does. Sorry, I'm not going to grow up if that's what any of you are about to say.
No.
If financials exploded higher. So we can talk about rates and financials in the same 2-minute discussion, right? What did you see from the move in financials? And then, of course, I'm going to tell you what I saw after I completely ignore what you say.
Well, what I saw was a steepening of the yield curve, which would be in theory good for financials. But I want to turn this on its head and ask you a question because I don't know the answer to the question I want to ask you.
Good.
Based on these election results, do you think that's why we saw the highest demand in the 30-year auction since 2018? Do you think that's why we saw a Japanese JGB go from 0.86% in their last auction to 1 full percentage point? We're not only seeing rates rise here in the U.S., but we're seeing it in the auctions, which is a little bit presumptive, I think, and then in Japan and Germany as well.
So it could just be that the rates got to a level that made them attractive enough for buyers to come back in. So we always talk about in stocks, like everything at a price, right? So the same thing is true in bonds. And when those auctions were starting to go crappily, if that's a word, in the last 6 months, it is a word. It could just be because the price wasn't exactly right. So all of a sudden rates shoot higher and then demand is a little more robust. That makes sense to me. Is it attracting? What I want to know is I want to break down that auction, which I haven't yet, because if it's attracting global demand, we could be saying that the U.S. is a better place for your money right now than the rest of the globe. If it's domestic demand, it will confuse the crap out of me because I would like to believe that one of the reasons rates went higher is because, one, Donald Trump may be inflationary. 2-year and 10-year break-evens both shot higher on the resolution of the
I think
election.
short term he is.
Yeah, short term he is too. This is a great point because that's actually what I want to wind it down to, because I do think that over time, supply side regulatory environment, supply side initiatives from the federal government will bring inflation down. But that takes some time. So that's interesting to me. So I personally don't want, I want the market to believe that there's better things to do with your money than to buy 10 or 30-year US bonds right now, even if they're at an attractive rate, because Donald Trump might spur demand on the short end.
So personally, I think what you just said is the key point. If you have enough deregulation in the proper way, right, you get productivity. And the only way to have growth and tame inflation at the same time is with a productivity miracle. We've had several guests that have told us that, so don't listen to us. Watch our other shows, and you'll hear about it from people that you'll think are a lot smarter than Jim and I, and you'd be right. So if you have a productivity miracle based on deregulation and some of these other things, I guess the last question, Jim, do you feel safe with Trump as president?
Do I feel safe from what?
I don't know. Do you need a safe space? I mean, I'll come over and help you construct one.
I'm emotionally vulnerable. But you have to, okay, so there's someone who's very, very close to me, and all these buzzwords and shit. I don't mean to. I just want you guys to know who we are if we're going to watch our show. And there's an adult man talking to my brother and I, and he's very close to the family. And he talked about something about being bullied, and finally, my brother just puts his hand and goes, "I have to stop you right there. We don't have any idea what you're talking about. We don't understand how a grown man can be bullied and feel emotionally vulnerable. That's why God invented bars and good bartenders. Now slap yourself up there, drop a 20 down, have a drink, talk it out with your pals, and go home. Push it all down. That's what we do. Am I wrong? Am I crazy? Am I an asshole?
No, I've got one message to young people, and the kindest way I can put it is to quote my sister who raised 3 girls. Suck it up, Buttercup. It doesn't get any easier.
It's just the way life is. Again, by the way, we do a lot of shows on health too. Watch your diet, exercise. These things help your mental anxiety. Which, by the way, the fact that our medical system doesn't draw enough lines between the two is an absolute travesty. Can we go now? Have we done enough on the Unfiltered Flash, or we got more?
Yeah, I just want to throw in one more thing. Take care of yourself and take care of your own finances, and you'll be okay. You don't have to worry about national elections like that. Get involved locally. It's much more important.
Yes. This is the Unfiltered Flash. I'm Jim Iuorio. That's Bobby Iaccino. By the way, none of what we do works without support that you guys give us, and you've given it to us so wonderfully over the last couple of years. The audience is growing. We're pushing this out. We think independent journalism is the antidote to that bullshit legacy media that keeps pushing the whims of sponsors, the whims of government, the whims of overzealous producers. We don't want that. We want to build something else. Please go to our sponsor's website, Hardcore Italians. It will make you smile, if anything else, and you will buy stuff for Christmas. Maybe not for yourself, but for that lovely Italian in your life. We are Jim Iuorio, Bobby Iaccino. This is the Unfiltered Flash of The Future's Edge.